Your hands together for Mrs. Colley.
Thank you, Ms. Yolanda. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second in a series of town hall meetings held by the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority here on the island of Grand Bahama. We are delighted that you have taken the time from your busy schedules to be with us. We know, we believe that you will find the engagement and the period of exchange this evening very valuable and helpful to you as we further inform you about URCA's functions, its roles, its goals for 2019, and just what benefits there is for you in what we do. And so sit back, listen attentively, ask all your questions, and please, if there is anything further that you need following this meeting, the information that we've given to you in the package contains all of our contacts. Please feel free to reach out to you. We are here to ensure that you are informed, and we want to make sure that we do that as thoroughly as we can, so do not hesitate to reach out to us. I'd like at this time to introduce our team to you that's here on the island. We have with us Mr. Siobhan Cambridge. Mr. Cambridge is our Director of Energy and Utility at the Authority. We have Mr. Carlton Smith. Mr. Smith is the Director of Electronic Communications, and no, I'm sure no stranger to you here on the island of Grand Bahama. And we have in our audience our Manager of Human Resources, Mrs. Georgia Martin-Sims, who makes sure that everything is done the way it ought to be done. That's welcome, Georgia, to Grand Bahama. And we have, last but definitely not least, the chief amongst us, the Chief Executive Officer of the Utilities Regulations and Competition Authority, Mr. Stephen Barrow. Please make Mr. Barrow feel welcome. I mean, he's home, but we are very grateful that they are all here to make sure you get the information and you get it right. Thank you so very much. Back to Yolanda.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Johnson-Colley. So we are going to jump right in, and we are now going to invite to the podium Mr. Stephen Barrow, who is the Chief Executive Officer of URCA, and he's going to explain to us exactly who URCA is and what is the function of URCA. So as he comes to the podium, please welcome one of our very own. I didn't know that. Welcome home. Put your hands together and welcome Mr. Stephen Barrow, Chief Executive Officer of URCA.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you all again for coming out on my own behalf and on behalf of URCA's board, staff, management. We have, we're no stranger to Grand Bahama. We've been here before, but we've recently, over the last few years, thought we've readjusted or adjusted the way that we approach our regulation throughout the Bahamas. Our presence in islands outside of New Providence has been a challenge in the past. We have limited resources, but we feel very strongly, and this is part of a drive that we've begun this year to ensure that we have a more comprehensive reach across the Bahamas. And we've looked at the islands in the context of the population, our stakeholders on those islands, and we're seeking to find ways to engage more strongly, more significantly outside of New Providence. URCA, the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, was founded in 2009 as an independent multi-sector regulator. What that means is we are founded by an act of parliament, but we are designed in a way so that we are not connected to, or we do not operate as part of the government. We are guided by government's policies in the sectors that we regulate, but we operate independently of the government and, more importantly, or just as importantly, of the operators within those sectors. And how that works is that not only are our decisions made by a body of people who are not influenced by government, but we are funded in a way that cannot be influenced either by government or by our regulated entities beyond what is important to maintain transparency and accountability for URCA. So we started out in 2009 as a regulator only of the electronic communication sector. That comprises telecommunications, broadcasting, pay TV, and management of radio spectrum. And from 2009 to 2016, that was we were one sector regulator. And what we achieved during that time, we focused on introducing competition in the electronic communication sector. So very early on, we addressed competition matters across the sort of fixed or your landline television services, broadband, internet services, and pay TV or cable TV type services to introduce competition in the Bahamas. Now we have competitive sectors, competitive markets in those areas. And then in 2016, I imagine everyone will be familiar by now with mobile competition that we were able to introduce in 2016 with the launch of the Alive network, which has now been operational and is operational throughout the intended service area, which covers 17 of the islands in the Bahamas. At the end of 2015, the Parliament passed the Electricity Act, which added the regulation of the electricity sector to URCA's mandate. And the electricity sector comprises anyone in the Bahamas or throughout the Bahamas that generates, transmits, distributes, or supplies electricity. And I focus or highlight the fact that it's throughout the Bahamas. As most people will be aware through the press and elsewhere, we have had challenges within Grand Bahama in relation to the impact of the Freeport area and the Hawksbill Creek Agreement on URCA's jurisdiction as defined in the law. We, however, have taken the view that we have a responsibility to people throughout the Bahamas, as the legislation says. And in fact, the legislation specifically includes the port area in Grand Bahama. What decisions may be made by courts as we go forward will be determined, and that will all happen in time. But in the meantime, URCA considers ourselves as having an obligation to regulate all or both of the sectors we regulate throughout the Bahamas, including Grand Bahama and the port area. What that means is that we have decided that we are going to take those steps that we can, or those steps that we should, and we will address the realities of the legal proceedings as they come. We are not going to be held back, so we are here to engage with the population in Grand Bahama, not only on the electronic communication sector, which is reasonably stable in terms of the jurisdictional issues, but also on the electricity sector. We have designed a work plan, but obviously because of the history, it's been primarily focused on New Providence and the rest of the Bahamas. We feel it's necessary for us to be here to hear from you on how we should approach or those parts of our mandate that apply to Grand Bahama. They apply regardless of what we might like to do or otherwise, so we intend to do what we have to do. So we are, as I mentioned, an independent public body. We have wide-ranging powers. Our aim is to the extent possible, ensure and to introduce and ensure and enable fair competition across the markets that we regulate. And we do so in a very transparent, non-discriminatory, fair manner, and which is accountable to the public directly. You will find with URCA that we consult the public on everything we do. We do everything we do openly by publication of full documents that, as far as possible, unless they contain deep confidential information of some person or one of our regulated entities, they are published in their entirety. So you can see, and we publish not only after we've made a decision, but our approach, as enshrined in the law, is to afford the public an opportunity to comment on what we are going to do or what we think we are going to do before we do it, so that you can have input to our decisions before they are made. And not only will you have the decision, but you will have our reasoning, our rationale. You will have full accountability from any decision URCA makes. And when you comment, we will answer you in detail and also publicly. So our answers, and as I said, all of our documents are available on our website at www.urcabahamas.bs. If you haven't caught that, it's in the materials. But all of it will display the same level of transparency and openness. Our actions are not hidden. We may not do everything that we want to do, or we may not do everything you think we should do, but you will have the opportunity to tell us that and you will have our answer as to why not. So this process that we're engaging in tonight and throughout this trip to Grand Bahama, and we're also doing it in other islands in the Bahamas, is part of our attempt to ensure we found ourselves out of touch with what's happening outside of New Providence, and we are seeking ways to ensure that issue is corrected. So I'm here really at this stage. I'm giving an overview. My colleagues will come and speak in more detail about each of the sectors for which they're responsible. We are designed in a way that three of us are members of URCA's board. We are executive members of the board, so we are appointed through competitive selection processes. We're not appointed by the government. We're appointed by the existing board, whatever that might be at the time, and through an advertised job process. We are professionals who work in our respective fields. And you may not know who I am, but I'm sure you know who Mr. Smith is, and his reputation speaks for itself. And Mr. Cambridge has spent 28 years in the electricity sector. So we are selected based on our competencies to do the job we do, and we are accountable only to our board, and our board is accountable to Parliament and the public. So with that said, I'll invite, perhaps go straight into the next slide, and I will ask, I've been through that, so if we can have the next slide, and I'll ask Mr. Smith to come up and present on the electronic communication sector.
Thank you, Stephen. It's good to be back in Grand Bahama as usual. This is home, and it's good to see that so many of you have come out to hear what URCA is all about and what we're doing. And so in the electronic communication sector, if you see on screen, our role is to promote the economic and social welfare of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas through the electronic communications products and services that are available in the marketplace. And exactly how do we do that? Well, what we want to do, the next slide please, what we want to do is ensure that we create a very competitive environment to facilitate the services that are offered in the electronic communications environment. And if you know now, particularly in the telecommunications sector, there are choices of providers. In the broadcast sector, there are choices of providers. We are concerned about the variety of services that are available in the marketplace, the quality of that service as it's delivered to you, the consumer. We also want to ensure that the cost of that service is competitive and you are provided the opportunity to receive those services at the best possible price. And we want to ensure that the service is available everywhere. We have a universal service obligation to ensure that the least among us have access to the services that are necessary to help improve the quality of their lives. And so, as a result of that, we've been trying to level the playing field, create a national broadband infrastructure, ensure that basic electronic communication services are available throughout the country, develop an industry that helps to meet the demand or to ensure that the demand is growing for these services, eliminate any barriers to entry into any of the subsectors of the electronic communication sector, and ensure, as Stephen mentioned, that there is sufficient spectrum for us to be able to facilitate the services that are offered to the public. And so that brings us to some of our priority projects for 2019. These are not the only projects that we do, but these are the priorities that URCA has identified for 2019. And I want to begin by talking a little about hurricanes, because hurricanes Grand Bahama has been prone to hurricanes. Grand Bahama has experienced more than its share of hurricanes during the last, say, 15 years. You've been hit by major hurricanes multiple times, leaving devastation across the island, eliminating communication services, even sometimes before the hurricane actually hits the island. And so URCA, recognizing how natural disasters can negatively impact a society, and the need for communications to be available to ensure that people are adequately prepared to deal with the oncoming natural disaster and to be able to ride out the period during the disaster and then recover following the disaster. And so we want to ensure that we have a conversation about how do we use information communication technologies to effectively communicate before, during, and after the storm. And we also want to ensure that the infrastructure that provides these communication services are robust enough to handle the pressure of these major natural disasters, be able to withstand the pressure and be able to provide services during and after the storm, before, during, and after any major natural disaster. And so this particular project is designed to ensure that we get the public input. As Stephen mentioned, we consult on all of the decisions that we take. And so we're going to be asking you very shortly to consult on the document, the consultation document that we will publish on our website. Your views are very important to us, and we need to hear from you because you've had some experiences. Your experiences of communicating during times of natural disaster are different from some of the other experiences in some of the other islands. And so we want to hear about your unique experiences that you have and ensure that we consider those experiences as part of the decisions that we take regarding the ICTs for disaster preparedness and management. We're also going to consult with some key agencies like the National Emergency Management Agency and some of the other agencies that work along with them, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and some of the other agencies that are involved to ensure that we hear their input as well. And we're going to consider all of the contributions before determining how we move forward. And once we make the decision, as that will be published, our final determination will be published on the website for all to see. I made this fundamental mistake last night and I'm making it again. But I'm home, so I'm allowed to make a mistake. And so the first thing that I should have mentioned is that what we do in the sector is guided by government policy. Government sets the policy for the electronic communications sector and determine what are the objectives for the sector for the next 3-year period, for a period of 3 years. And so from that policy, we determine what projects are necessary to help the government achieve its policy objectives for that period. That policy document is with the government at this time. They are revising it, and that will be published very shortly on our website. And you will be able to read that document and understand what the objectives are for the next 3-year period, and you can also determine whether you think our policies are helping to achieve that objective. And so, as Stephen mentioned again, transparency is important to the regulator. And so that document will be published very shortly on our website. The other thing we think is a priority for 2019 is a review of the Code of Practice for Content Regulation in Broadcasting. That's the Broadcasting Content Code. And there are 3 critical areas that we want to take a look at in this code as proposed amendments to the code. One has to do with elections, one has to do with gaming, one has to do with complaints handling. And so our experience during the last election has taught us that some abnormal circumstances can occur, and we need to be prepared to respond to those abnormal circumstances during election coverage. Broadcasters, as you know, are not allowed to broadcast anything related to an election on polling day until after 6 p.m. So from morning until 6 p.m., nothing can be said. During the last election, we had an abnormal situation where one of the polls in one of the constituencies did not open at 8 o'clock. It opened a little later and required an extension for the voters to get the full amount of time allocated for them to exercise their constitutional right. And so that polling division closed after 6 p.m. And the broadcasters were wondering, what do we do? Do we start our broadcasting at 6 p.m. or do we delay it until the polls close officially? And so, because that was a question in 2017, we don't want that to be a question in 2022. And so we want to consult on whether or not the polls we should wait to broadcast until after the polls close, whatever time that is, or do we begin broadcasting at 6 p.m. as established by the law for the polls to open at 8 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. and where that abnormal situation occurs, as long as you may not broadcast on what's happening in that particular poll, it may be okay. But whatever it is, whatever the decision is, you, the public, have to be a part of the conversation. You have to tell us whether you think that we should do this, A, or we should do this, B, or we should do something else. The other part of that is the gaming industry. Recently, gaming has been regulated in our country. And gaming potentially can have a damaging effect on people in different ways. And we want to ensure that we have a conversation about advertising for the gaming sector. The most vulnerable among us when it comes to gaming are children. If they're exposed to the advertising, and we know that gaming is available online, and access to gaming platforms are very easy for children. And if they are encouraged to use these platforms, it can have a devastating impact on some of our younger people. And so we want to have a conversation with the public about what do we do about advertising for the gaming industry. Do we introduce a watershed period? What should we do? How should we approach this whole issue about advertising gaming on radio and television in our country? And still on the topic of broadcasting, when URCA was established in 2009, the Act made provisions for the establishment of public service broadcasting in our country. What does that mean? We want to develop broadcasting that speaks to the socio-economic, cultural development of our society, developing the citizenry of the country, and the programming content should reflect those objectives. And URCA has been working over the years to try and determine how do we best achieve that. Well, this year we're going to create a document that we think will help to establish the framework for the development of public service broadcasting in the country. But once again, you will be allowed to participate in that conversation. And so that document will be available later in the year. And the final thing on our priorities is ICTs for persons with disabilities. I will not go into detail about that project because we're just in the initial stage of having our discussions about that. But we want to ensure that we have discussions around the availability of information communication technologies to all sectors of our society. And so that will deal specifically with how we should have these resources available, make these resources available for people who may be challenged in some way. So you'll hear more about that project as we roll that out. But we're just in the initial stage of having our discussions about that particular project. And so that brings me to the end of my presentation. My colleague Siobhan Cambridge will come and talk about the electricity sector at this time.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to ask you to just indulge me for a minute as I try to draw a tie between the two sectors that we regulate. You know, because a lot of people tend not to understand what it is we do and why we do it. So when you think of the electronic communication sector, I want you to think that it has to do with all of this technology stuff that we have that's going on today with the internet and the ability to send information and receive information. And some of you may have heard a lot of talk lately about this concept of the Internet of Things. This sending and receiving information allows things to be smarter. And this is the way where the world is going. We're going to be controlling our lives and running our lives through the sending and receiving of this information. I like to tell Carlton that, yeah, you control the information and the regulation of what is sent and how it is sent, but without the energy from my sector, you're dead in the water. So his Internet of Things is highly dependent on energy. But the truth be told, both sectors, are very, very dynamic. The rate at which technology is changing is astounding. I can tell you, and just by show of hands, I'd like to ask, how many people here receive more mail through the post box than through email? How many of you know what a post box is? Okay, so this is the way things are changing in the world, and in a few years from now, if you're not connected through ECS technology and what have you, you would have gotten left behind. And that's not just as an individual, that is as a country. As the independent regulator, we serve as the independent objective observers, or the repository of experts that are watching over the country's performance and progress in both of these sectors. Okay? So a lot of people are aware that a lot of things are going on from the computer side, because every other year you have to upgrade your computer, or you get this new Microsoft, this and that and the next. But the electricity sector is just as dynamic, and the new wave now in the electricity sector is this whole thing about renewables, and it's started off with solar, and then it went to wind, and now the latest new toy on the block is this whole concept of storage and what have you. And so these are things that we in the energy sector are looking out for, being the gatekeepers and watching out and trying to ensure that the Bahamas remains up to date, and because we're competing on a global arena. So despite what my boss may have said about some jurisdictional challenges that we have here, we at URCA feel that in order to look out for everybody in the Bahamas, we have to stay on top of these things. And so tonight, I'm going to attempt to tell you some of the things that we're doing despite the challenges that we have, and that, at the end of the day, it's going to progress the energy sector and efficiency of the sector for all Bahamians. Because our job, as we see it, is really to ensure that within the sectors we regulate, that accessibility, affordability, and the quality of service in those sectors is second to none. Okay? So you'd hear a lot of talk about the electricity sector, and people say, what all does that entail? For us, and as defined by the Electricity Act, that is anything to do with the generation, transmission, distribution, or supply of electricity. Okay? Generation is how you generate it. Most people will know about engines and what have you, but like I told you, this thing is moving real fast. You'd have heard stuff years ago about fuel cells. Now you're hearing about renewable energy, so there's wind, there's solar, and what have you. There's transmission. That's the high voltage component of moving energy in bulk from one location to the next. And distribution is when they start to step it down on the what we call a low voltage scale for in your distribution within your neighborhood, and supply is actually what you're receiving at your home. So we oversee every aspect of that system. If you can, I can the next slide, please. Give me the next one. Right there. Okay. So I touched a bit on the renewable energy, and one of the things that URCA has been working on for the last 2 years, because the regulation of electricity came into play as a result of an amendment of the Electricity Act in 2015, where regulation for the entire Bahamas was vested in URCA. And the Electricity Act mandated several things that had to be done right away. And those things were the licensing of the two major entities, which would be the Bahamas Power and Light and the Grand Bahama Power Company. It also called for some measures to be taken with regards to consumer protection plans and the development of that, as well as some things to do with the Renewable Energy Plan. And as I go on further, I'll talk to some other, I guess, mandates that we have as a result of the Electricity Act, which have to do with the promotion of energy efficiency and conservation. So one of the first things that we worked on after licensing was what we call a small-scale renewable generation program. And what we did was we took the large-scale renewable energy plan for BPL and soon to be for other licensed entities, and we split it into three components. And one is for small-scale residents and small commercial businesses that wish to participate in the renewable energy program. And at present, it is built out on the demand in any particular island. So it's capacity-based because you don't want to create stability problems on the grids in which you connect to. So the largest systems that we have right now that is allowable is 100 kW in New Providence, and it's sized accordingly based on the demand in the respective islands, and that is the way that is allocated. That program basically allows you to connect a renewable energy system to your home. You're able to utilize that power to supplement your energy consumption, which technically brings down your bill. And depending on where you're located, various considerations will be taken into place as to how you're compensated for any power that you feed back to the grid. The next stage in that program, because the appetite or the subscription level that we're seeing is not what we would like for it to be, but it's growing at a healthy rate. But we have had a considerable amount of inquiries and an expression of interest from larger entities, which would be small, medium enterprises and even government entities. And so we've carved out another section within there from 100 kW up to 1 megawatt that we're now working on the framework for that portion of the production mix. And that portion is going to be called the Renewable Energy Self-Generation Program. And from there, we'll then move on to the larger entities, which is more on a utility scale level, and that would be, once you go above 1,000, we consider you to be utility scale or someone who has the capacity to actually sell power at the same level as one of the public electricity suppliers. So at that stage, there will be a framework will be put in place for what they call independent power producers. Don't get hung up on a lot of the terms. During the question and answer session, if you need clarification on those, I will get back to those for you. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so this list here is a list of our key projects for this year. We call them our Tier 1 projects. I don't want you to think that this is all I'm doing for the year. So this is just Tier 1 stuff. We have Tier 2 and we have Tier 3. These are the must-do's, or I guess I go home. The Tier 2 that would like to do is, and then the Tier 3s are the ones that we hope we can get to within this year. So the SSRG Advancement Program is a program that we have, like I told you, our uptake in the small-scale renewable generation program. It's going at a good rate, but it could be better. And truth be told, we're trying to facilitate a goal that is set by the government, and it's enshrined in the National Energy Plan, and that is to have 30% renewable integration within the power generation mix of the Bahamas by the year 2030. We understand that that cannot be done without the participation of you as the residential consumers and as small commercial consumers. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're out there pushing the benefits of this program to various consumers, letting them know that, this is something that will allow you to do your part in reducing our carbon footprint as a country. It'll also reduce the impact on your pockets because you're actually generating the power from renewable sources of your own. And, at the end of the day, if you have any surplus power, there may be opportunities for you to sell that power back to the utility. And so one of the things we're doing is we're trying to increase individuals' knowledge of what renewable energy is all about at the, let's say, on the small residential level. And we're also trying to reach out to financial institutions and to get them to understand the merits of this program and the fact that it provides a valuable asset that will enhance the value of homes and what have you. So there is some security in financing these type of home improvement programs. Now, I've talked a lot considerably about the renewable self-generation and the small-scale renewable generation. But that's on what we call, in the energy sector, we have two segments. We have supply and we have demand. On the demand side, the demand is how much power you're requesting and using. And this is where our promotion of energy efficiency and conservation comes in. The government, through a lot of incentives with regard to efficient appliances, LED bulbs, even the solar systems and everything else, is trying to incentivize persons to swap out inefficient equipment and to utilize some smart technology, energy management systems. All of these type of things are receiving favorable duty rates and stuff today as we speak. And so, you know, individuals will say, nothing's wrong with my fridge, nothing's wrong with my air conditioner. But we're doing things to teach you how to read their consumption and to see just how it may benefit you to trade that in. Don't give it to nobody, please. I mean, you know, don't pass your problems on. You know, we probably need to look at a recycling program, because I can see people saying, let me give this to mama, you know. But we're trying to get people to go out and buy more energy efficient stuff, because at the end of the day, within a year or two, you will break even. Okay, so we're doing things like we're in the process of looking at designing apps, and even we're going to be later on in the year offering some home assessment programs through various other programs that we'll do, and I'm sure Ms. Johnson-Colley will speak to that later on. So we're doing a lot of things in that arena as well from the conservation side. So that's one of our major projects this year. Another project that we have that is of great importance to us is the framework for the procurement of power generation resources. And when we say that, we mean goods and services throughout the sector. The Electricity Act mandates that anything that is procured really is from a standpoint of a least cost production and supply perspective, but it also stipulates in there that consideration should be given to renewable sources first, and it also stipulates that within that procurement process there should be investment opportunities for Bahamians. So these are things that we as the regulator have been mandated to ensure go into a process for the procurement of goods and services. So as Mr. Barrow would have stipulated earlier, everything that URCA does is about accountability and transparency. So we're in the process of developing the rules for this procurement. These rules will then be put out for public consultation so that you, the prospective, potential bidders or suppliers of these goods and services, or even as the end users, may be able to provide your feedback as to whether you think we've done enough, or to give your viewpoints as to how we can refine that process to make it fair, transparent, accountable, and to meet the goals as envisioned by the Electricity Act. And then the last one has to do with the establishment of alternative dispute resolution schemes. And I won't go too much into that because Ms. Johnson-Colley will tell you a lot more about our complaints process. But the complaints process basically, for most of in both sectors that we regulate, the first step is really that you would take the issue to the provider, which is the licensee. If you're not satisfied in the first instance, then there's a means for you to come to URCA, and then again there will be an outline process as to how that claim or that dispute will progress if it's not resolved in the first or second round. Right up to once you've exhausted our alternative dispute resolution schemes, there's even opportunities in the law to go to the utilities tribunal, right? So, and you know, I always like to place a little rider on this whole thing about complaints and ADR, because we're not just open to hearing complaints, we're also open to hearing whatever suggestions, constructive criticisms, whatever the case may be. And you will hear a little bit more about how you could contact us and to provide us that information, whether it be by phone or email, hard copy, whatever. Next slide. I think this was the end of my major projects. So I will now turn the floor over to, I'm seeing a lot of pointing, to the moderator, sorry. The moderator will come back. Madam Moderator? Yes.
So we'll now have the segment on complaints and handling. We want to welcome Mrs. Mavis Johnson-Colley to the podium. And I think after that we will go into our question and answer segment, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'm sure there's been a lot of note-taking. And so, Mrs. Johnson-Colley, you come to the podium.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. How are you finding the information thus far?
Really good.
Talk back. Great. And so just before our CEO comes to you and speaks about some general projects, we want to let you know, how do you get to URCA? And what is that process? And so consumers are a very key group of stakeholders to URCA. We want to ensure that at all times you are aware of your rights, and of course, when there are rights, there are also obligations. And in consultation with the service providers, URCA develops a set of standards. For example, in the electronic communication sector, we call them the Consumer Protection Regulations. There is segments of that document in your kits. We do have a full document at the back of the room for you. And in that document, it sets out what we expect, or how we expect the service providers to treat with you in regards to billings, contracts, advertising, what are the set standards for the quality of service that you engage the service provider for, and when there is a breach of that contract, then you have recourse to file a complaint with the service provider. If they don't respond in a way that satisfies you, or if they don't respond at all, you then come to URCA. URCA will conduct an investigation and make a decision. If the decision made by URCA is not in your favor, you then have another level or line of recourse. You can then take that up and appeal up with the Utilities Appeal Tribunal. When you come to us, we ask that you have all of your documents, in fact, no matter what sector your complaint concerns, make sure you have the account number, the name of the account, the name on the account. If there are any billings, any documents, any contracts that has an impact or concerns the matter of which you complain, make sure you have all of those documentation when you come to us. And we will be sure to reach out to the service provider, and as I said, a team at URCA will investigate that matter and make a decision. But the aim is to make sure the customer, the consumer, is satisfied with the results. As I said earlier, we've developed a comprehensive set of regulations for the electronic communication sector. We're currently working on a set of regulations for the electricity and energy sector. And what we are aiming for is one combined booklet or document that will be available on our website. We will consult on it. We'll come back to you with it in this community. And we'll also break it down into small bits and pieces, small bites, small documents that makes it very easy for you to understand and read. And so the regulations covers billing issues, covers advertising issues, where sometimes a service provider may say, if you do X, we give you B. If they give you C instead, that's not what the agreement was. That's not what they advertised. You have a right to complain about it. We also cover fault repair. And so if your equipment failed you, if you are not getting the channels you subscribe for example, you have a right to complain. And so there are a lot of details that you'll find, we don't have the time to go through all of them this evening, in our Consumer Protection Regulations document. It's on our website. There are many ways to contact us. You can reach us via our website, www.urcabahamas.bs. We also invite and welcome emails. You can email us at info@urcabahamas.bs. Our hotline, 242-393-0263, and this information is available on all of our documents and little bits and pieces of information that we circulate that you have on you. And as I said, the complaint handling procedure is simple. You're not satisfied with the service, you're not satisfied with a decision, you gather your information, gather your account, come to us. We will investigate, we will make a decision. You're not satisfied, you have a right to appeal that decision. Everything we do, as you've heard throughout our presentation this evening, we do it with a view that you, the consumer, have a right to know. And so there's transparency in all of our actions and decisions. Everything is available on our website. The documents that we present to you this evening are available on our website. And I think I have covered most of the information pertaining to consumer protection regulations and the consumer complaint filing processes. I'd like now to invite our CEO again to come and talk about some general projects. And the way we like to speak to these is that URCA wants to model the behavior it wants to see in our consumers and also our businesses. Mr. Barreau.
Hi again, everyone. My staff knows I like to have the last word. So what I wanted to discuss, I mean, the one thing that we haven't mentioned, and I really want to kind of end on some notes about what we're really about. As an organization, our mission is improving lives through effective utilities regulation. What we are trying to achieve every day as we go to work is to make sure that we're doing things that improve your lives. It's a tough thing to do. It's the country's broad. It has various different issues across its length and breadth, and the sectors we regulate have their challenges. We came into sectors that already have challenges, but the way we've approached some of our key projects, and this list, sorry, is that an S? This list that's behind me, we firstly want to make sure that the consumers who are at the heart of what we do are properly served across both of the sectors we regulate. Mrs. Johnson-Colley mentioned our approach to consumer protection regulations and complaints, and that is really at the core of how we make sure that we're on the right track. If you don't complain, if your rights aren't at the heart of what we're doing, we are never going to improve your lives, and we are never going to achieve our mission or get on the path to our mission. So it is critical that if you have a problem, that we have a way of finding out. We are so grateful to all of you for coming out, because this is one part of how we do it. But we can't always have a town meeting. We can't reach each of you, and this town meeting isn't going to give every one of you time to talk about all of your problems. So our accessibility to you is critical, and how we define our relationship with you as consumers within the sectors we regulate is also critical. So we're going to be doing a lot of work, and we will be coming back out, I'm pretty sure, on the road to discuss our proposed consumer protection regulations later this year. And I wanted to take this opportunity to really encourage all of you. Check our website. We have a process where you can sign up and get notifications. Check our website and make sure you're aware of when those documents are published. We hope to get them out later this year for comment. And then look out for these meetings that we intend to have, and come tell us what you think. If our standards are wrong, if our standards are not improving your life, then we need to know before we put them in place, so that you can tell us how we need to improve them. Help us to be better at what we do. So that's the first point. The importance of consultation, the importance of your input into our work cannot be overstated. And that leads me into one of our next major projects, general projects for the year. As CEO, I'm involved in both sectors. And my role really is to ensure that we achieve the economies and an approach to regulation, to improving lives, that takes both sectors and ensures that both sectors across the country are all treated consistently and get adequate attention across the board. And one of the problems that we have as a regulator is, how do we measure when we improve your life? I mean, do we come ask you, is your life better today with mobile or otherwise? We can't do that with everyone. What we are trying to do during the course of this year, and one of the key projects for me, is to come up with a set of ways, a measure, a set of numbers that we can use to track whether our work is having the right impact in the country. So we are seeking to combine all of the different pieces of information that go into your quality of life in the sectors we regulate and put them together into a set of measures that we as an organization can continue to look at and say, well, are we having the right impact? And if not, where is our impact falling short, both geographically and service-wise, so that we can measure and determine and be accountable to the public for our performance as an organization. We are a cost. We do a job which needs to be done, but it needs to be done the right way. Otherwise, we're just wasting time. So our intention is to create what we're calling the organization, URCA's OPIs, Organizational Performance Indices. And they will track each of the sectors we regulate. So you will have a measure to see how the electricity sector is doing. You'll have measures to see how the electronic communication sector is doing, probably divided up into telecommunications and broadcasting. And this will be a combination of things like revenues, costs, prices, but also surveys. So we will do periodic surveys to make sure we understand how you feel. It will look at things like how often people complain. Are complaints resolved within the right period of time, or do they take too long? Are installations happening as they should, and so on? So it will look at all of the data. We collect a lot of data from our operators and the public, and we'll be collecting more. But it will combine that data into measures that are easy to read, easy to understand, and that track whether or not URCA is doing its job. And when they track in the wrong directions, we will be able to make adjustments. Hopefully I won't be fired as soon as they track in the wrong direction, but we will be able to make adjustments to ensure that we are back on the right track. So we are determined as an organization to achieve what we're doing, and that's part of the reason why we're here, because we feel that we need to achieve more in Grand Bahama. But we're also determined to measure and be accountable for what we do and do not achieve, and let the chips fall where they may. So that's the second, and as Mrs. Johnson-Colley mentioned just before she left the podium, that we're also intending to walk the walk, to demonstrate what we are proposing or what we are regulating, what we are promoting. So to that end, URCA has made a commitment to go green ourselves. We as an organization are seeking to reduce our impact on the environment across all aspects of our operation. By the end of this year, those of you who are able to come over to New Providence, if you pass by our offices, hopefully you will see our solar panels over our car park. We're trying to install a canopy so that we reduce our energy usage within the organization. We have embarked on an internal program to conserve our own energy usage, to reduce our own energy usage within the organization as much as possible, and to turn our building into a beacon, into an example of what energy conservation can do. And we will track our energy usage, so we'll hopefully create some good material that can be used by other businesses that want to go this way, to see what the costs and benefits are of taking this approach. Because we're not just doing it to save us money, or to save the sectors who pay for us money. We're doing it as an example to demonstrate how this can impact your lives or your businesses on a day-to-day basis. So that's, and on the non-energy related side, we're also going green. We're eliminating plastics. We're reducing using renewable or rather non-environmentally friendly materials across our business, reducing paper usage, all of the things that we need to do. And our intent is to track it, to ensure that we can monitor, we can regulate, and we can tell our story so that it can be used by others. So those were things I wanted to highlight, and really just to make sure that we end. Our mission is to improve lives through effective regulation. That means lives should get better, and we should be doing it the right way. And we can only do that with input from the public. It doesn't matter. We will sit in our offices and we may think we're doing the right thing, but we understand that it may not be. So we're always prepared to listen, and we're always prepared to change, to do things better. Thank you for listening. I think we have a question-answer session. I will turn back over to the moderator to lead us through that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we now have our question and answer session, and what we're asking is that you use the microphone provided at the center of the aisle. We invite you at this time to ask questions. Here we go. So what we'd like for you to introduce yourself. We'd like your name and let us know who you are addressing the question to, and I will give the microphone to.
Good night. My name is Bernard Hepburn. I address my question to the gentleman who deals
Mr. Hepburn, put the microphone to your mouth just a little more for me, please.
The gentleman,
Thank you.
the gentleman who deals with the radio, broadcaster.
Oh, Mr. Smith.
What I wanted to say is, see, I'm a musician, a recording artist, and to be honest with you, the broadcasting segment in the Bahamas seems to be foreign, meaning that majority of the money the broadcasting segment makes goes foreign, because you know they pay for airplay, right? And entities like PRS that literally collects all of that, they pay it out. What I want to find out is this: do you guys give the government advice in regards to how much airplay should Bahamians be getting on the airwaves to compare with how much the foreigners get? Because right now it's like 98% foreign, to like 2% Bahamian.
Our advice to the government is not about the percentage of broadcast airtime musicians in the Bahamas get. We don't regulate what percentage of programming you include in your schedule to facilitate Bahamian content. That's why we have public service broadcasting. Public service broadcasting has a mandate to ensure that the programming focuses on Bahamian content primarily. Private commercial stations, we cannot tell them that they must play a percentage of their music as Bahamian music. We could encourage them to do it, but through our content regulation industry group, have conversations with them about, but at the end of the day, when we decide to do that, and they're not making money, then they can blame us.
Okay.
And so in a private commercial enterprise, we cannot be involved in trying to dictate to them what their content should be. If their content passed the test of taste and decency, and it's designed to appeal to a specific audience, we cannot go down the road of telling them you should use this genre of music, that genre of music, or the other genre of music.
All right, I get what you said. You are a non-factor in this. What I'm saying. What I'm saying to you also is that if you here to help the Bahamian people, or if you here to get some advice, here's my advice. Imagine The foreigners was 90+% in the workforce in the Bahamas, and Bahamians was 2%. Imagine if that was the case. Because see, that's my profession you're talking about now. I happen to know that, hey, all the money that the broadcasting company makes, they making that for foreign entities. Now, if you want to give the government advice, see, give the government advice what even Jamaica does. Jamaica don't play Bahamian music, you know. You know that, right? They don't play it.
Okay.
You know why? That's their law. They could make that law. We could make the same law. So if you want some advice to give to the government, and you looking out for the Bahamian public, you say you're looking out for the Bahamian public, right? See, you ain't helping me if ain't no money getting in my pocket, bro.
That's why we're introducing public service broadcasting
No,
to help look out for the You asked me a question, so let me answer. Let me respond.
I asked you.
Well, you're saying that what you think we should do, so just give me an opportunity, and I'll let you continue. We are introducing public service broadcasting for that same purpose, because public service broadcasting emphasizes national content that is Bahamian produced and generated content. And once public service broadcasting does not only apply to one specific broadcaster, it could apply to multiple broadcasters. And so if a broadcaster decides that they want to participate in the public service broadcasting initiative, and they approach the regulator about involving local content as a part or as a significant part of their programming content, then that will be facilitated through the framework that we're trying to put in place to ensure that Bahamian content is a significant focus of broadcasting in our society.
See, you're still missing what I'm saying. See, you said you had a problem, let's say an election, whether to broadcast at a certain time, right? You had a problem. Now you want some advice, right? That advice is love. When they finish doing what they're doing, broadcast. That's the simple advice for that. See, the simple advice for what I'm saying to you right now is this. Let the government know we want the majority of airwaves music being played in the Bahamas be Bahamian. You know why? The money what is being made, whether you get it or not, is not being trickled down to the Bahamian artists. The Bahamian artists right now is getting robbed. And I'm asking you, I'm telling you, because even the foreign entities like PRS, they collect the money from all these radio stations because there's a law that says every radio station have to pay them. And if they don't pay them, they even takes the government to court. And they already did it before. They take this government, not this government, but the Bahamas government to court before for not paying royalties. Now, what I'm saying to you is simple, man. You want to give the government advice and you want some advice, go after the most percentage be played on every radio station in this country, be Bahamian. I ain't asking you to go beg them or try to make a deal with them or whether to do this or not. No, make it a law. See, this is the Bahamas. We are Bahamian. We come first. We need to be the majority, not the minority. That's what I'm saying to you. You see what I'm saying? So in other words, when the royalties pay out, we'll be the majority again, not the minority.
Thank you very much for your advice.
The name is Rudolph Stubbs. I think I'm going to address this to Mr. Cambridge, saying that my statement that will be turned into a question is going to be centered around the field that he's in, that he covers. When Ms. Johnson Colley was up, she spoke about consumer protection. And here on Grand Bahama, we have residents who at least 4 to 5 times a year leave their premises. That means they leave the island and they go away. Easter time, they go to Florida and elsewhere to visit their relatives and family to spend time together. The National Regatta in Exuma, they go away and enjoy themselves in the family island. August, Monday weekend, or during August, Monday, they go to various family islands and homecomings to enjoy themselves. Likewise, because July and August is vacation periods, they also leave their homes and go abroad. Likewise, too, in December, they go to New Providence because they live in Grand Bahama, and I'm talking about those who are from New Providence, who live over here. I've been here from 1985, so I'm from New Providence. They go to Nassau for the Christmas and New Year's celebrations and to spend time with family. So they spend an average of 5 to 14 days in those periods outside of their homes. Okay? Sometimes it may be even more than that. But what has happened consistently with the power company is that when you get your monthly bills, there's no difference. I personally experienced it because I make my complaints. And I said to them, I didn't go to all the details. I said, how come my July, well, I've gone to June, July, August, and September bill is the same. If I'm taking my family on vacation for 14 days, right, in the month of August, and that was a religious thing that I did, how come my bill is still the same? Somewhere along the line, there should be some variable. And many residents on Grand Bahama complain about the situation. So we got no consumer protection in that aspect coming from the electricity company here on Grand Bahama. Okay? And then there was a time when there used to be a lot of power surges. Used to be. Well, maybe it still is too, but I'm just saying, and there was that consistent complaints. And so most Bahamians then got educated and said, look here, buy yourself a power surge device, especially when the computers came out. Okay? All right? And still, because I had a relative on the ridge in Grand Bahama, Royal Bahamian State, who went through that problem, and they lose their electronics in their home, and they got no compensation. So I'm speaking towards consumer protection. What is URCA going to do to ensure that there's consumer protection, sir?
All right. In terms of consumer protection, basically the Electricity Act requires that each public electricity supplier produce a consumer protection plan, and that consumer protection plan is then approved by URCA, and it becomes a document that you can then rely on for enforcement for whatever consumer protection remedies that company proposes in that plan. That plan, the way it is done is that it's a plan that's developed by the licensee. It goes out for consultation, and you would have heard Mr. Burrow go into all of the intricacies of consultation and getting the feedback and us then doing a statement of results on that consultation before that document is enacted. But just to address the issue of what you were talking about, it's a common complaint that we hear not only from Grand Bahama but in other jurisdictions throughout the Bahamas. And one of the things that I like to explain to people is that your electricity bill is composed of a couple of variables. There's a lot of things that can go on in reading your bill. But the key thing is, if you have any concerns about what you're being billed, we have these phones now. You go out or you read your bill and you see what your billing period is. Go just take a snapshot of what it's reading. And if there's any discrepancy between that and what is on your bill, you walk into, hold the newspaper up next to it so you get the date and everything. You walk into the consumer desk at any of the utilities throughout the Bahamas and you said, look, there's a discrepancy between what is on this bill and what I'm seeing on my meter. Can you please explain this? Now, the thing is, if there is no discrepancy, there's another variable that could kick in. But the key thing is you want to check your consumption, okay? Because based on what you're consuming, you could go into different rate classes. So during a low period, you may be consuming a little bit of kilowatt hours. During a high period, you might be consuming more, and the price may vary based on you moving from, let's say, out of a 0 to 200 class to 200 to 800 category of kilowatt hours. So there's a lot of things in analyzing your bill, but each utility company in the Bahamas have individuals present who are there, and it's their job to explain that bill, break it down to you if it's some component of it that you don't understand. Now, from my past experience, what I've found, particularly like with the issue that you're talking about with when you're outside of your house, and I don't know if it's a thing here in Grand Bahama, but in New Providence, a lot of people tend to have water pumps and stuff like that. And they go out and your water pumps kick in and out while you're off because you have, leaking flaps or whatever in the toilet or whatever the case may be. Or some people will go out, they'll leave their AC on, so really the loading in the house isn't really changing even though you're not there. The house is still heating up and cooling down during the day. Or, we also have this thing where we like to leave a couple lights on so people could think someone in the house. So even though we're away, our consumption tends not to change. But if it all boils back down to that meter reading, and if that meter reading is not making sense, you can then even request that meter be tested. And so once you've exhausted all of those, then if you're still not satisfied, then I say you bring it to us. We have the means and the powers, we think, to actually come out and do some monitoring on your site of our own, plugging some things or having some specialists come and plug some things and logging what your consumption is just to verify and try and get to the bottom of it. Okay? I hope that gives you some things to think about, but we can talk afterwards. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Could you hold your position, because I'm speaking along the same lines as Mr. Stubbs. First of all, my name's Ortland Anthony Strawn, and I'm the proprietor of CompuSec Printing and Party. When I heard that URCA was coming, my first thought was, where was URCA over the years? We've been in this struggle. But based on what you guys have said, being established in 2009 and coming forward, that answered my question. My first thought of, as I stand here, is how does URCA regulate over the power company here in Grand Bahama? And I do believe that the power company is under the subject of the Port Authority. How does URCA fits in to regulate the power company?
Well, I'll give you a short answer, and then my boss could come and give you the long answer. But the short answer is that the Electricity Act basically states that URCA is the regulator for the Bahamas. Okay. And that is our interpretation of it. Others see it differently.
Well,
and that is the reason I think
let me just say, us in Grand Bahama would be looking forward to see URCA working on our behalf going forward. As Mr. Stubbs mentioned in reference to his power bill, I've been studying the power bill over the time, and what I've noticed is that what is happening, the power we are placed in bracket like you state. You're from 0 to 200 or 0 right. to 20,000. Right. What the power company is doing, their charges can start from $10 and go up to $100. But us, who it's 85% of the users who falling in that lower bracket, they are charging us the higher rate. The people who are using over 60,000 megawatts, they are charging them the lower rate. How do you regulate that? And that is the reason why many of us, even though we have done everything to get our power down, that is the reason why we cannot get it any lower. And that's a fact.
Okay. What you're talking about is the rate classes. And rate classes are a part of one of these things that they call rate design. And the way that is done is that different rates are offered to different classes of customers to incentivize different things. So when you talk about the residential type rate structure, you'll normally see that it starts off with a low rate for the first X amount of kilowatt hours, and then it goes up a little bit if you use in excess of that, and it may go up even more if you use, let's say, 800 kilowatt hours or more. That is really the way that is designed is what we call, it's a block tariff structure, and the lower rate is to make sure that the power is accessible to the masses, to everybody. And they quantify what is considered to be almost an essential block of consumption, like what everybody needs to survive, and that is at a lower rate. When you go into the higher rate, that is when the economist or whoever did the rate study says that this is where you're starting to get a little bit extravagant, and we want to incentivize you to operate more efficiently and to curtail your use. And then when you get really out there where you're using a lot of electricity, they say, well, hey, you could afford it, let's just charge them what it really costing us or whatever. On the other extreme, no, I'm getting to this point. Let me get to this point.
It's right here on one of the power bill. That's what I was going to say. Okay.
I'm telling you, that is how it is normally done in most of the residential classes, because you want to make it accessible to everybody, because it's an essential service and you want to make sure that homes are able to get it. From business perspective, depending on what is in your market, okay? Let's say Freeport, in this instance, to me, or my understanding, was designed to be, or to incentivize industrialization and all the rest of that. You had the pharmaceutical industries and all the rest of these. So in order to get those companies to come and set up businesses here, what you'll find is that companies or whatever market segment you're targeting may have some incentive built into their rate. And normally it is the more you use for them, the lower the rate goes. So you find in a market like here, you find the industrial rate might be structured like that. If you go to somewhere like New Providence, where it's more based on the tourism and all the rest of that, the hotels have that kind of rate structure. Or if you go to, let's say, some other jurisdiction, because...
Sir, you're explaining yourself well.
Okay.
Very well, very clearly. We understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But here, I have residential and I have commercial.
Right.
But here it is, this residential. I'm between 0 and 350. You know what they're charging me? Now, the standard rate is between $10 and $40 for residential. But because I'm using between 0 and 350, they're charging me $30.38, which is the high, almost at the maximum. Likewise, in commercial, the kilowatt charges are 0 to 20,000. Because most of us are falling in that, and the rate they charge are between $34 and up to $100. But us who down at the bottom of the spectrum in that 0 to 20,000, they're charging us $98 plus, all the top rate. That is the reason why we are suffering. That is the reason why businesses are closing in Grand Bahama. Okay. However, I don't want to take up all of the time because there's a lot I can say. But
right. But what I can tell you is that...
Let me go to my next...
Okay.
I'm sure you understand me, and the
I'm not sure I fully understand, but I would like to look at the sheets with you when we're done.
Thank you very much.
So maybe we could do a more one-on-one, and I could
Thank you very much. Yeah. Further on. Our problem here...
Well, I need to see them. I can't speak to it without seeing it.
Over the years, the power company has destroyed us, our equipment, our appliance, and they have every... In fact, let me read you what is their main clause. In February, I was in the court system, and I sat and I witnessed the power company fought with one of our local residents, their lawyer, just to deny their claim. And they're begging the judge. Last week, I witnessed something again, similar to that. I personally, as a business person, went through that. I'm at the point now where I invested in 2001, I invested in a $200,000 equipment. In a few years, the power company destroyed it, whereby I had to go out and get loan to get that equipment back. It cost me over $30,000. The power company took more than a year before they respond to my first letter. 1 year to respond. I have all of this. I'm going to leave this with you. But to show you how they've been treating us. And the local resident appliances are being destroyed. I sit on the board of one of our condominium association. And as recent as today, the manager called me and she said to me, Mr. Strawn, I think we are losing our washers and dryers because the power is continuously dipping. Said, that's the reason why we have to continue to change washers and dryers. Go to the power company. I want you guys, what you all could do for us, go in there and see how many claims were submitted over the years and how many was paid or denied. We need a place to send these claims. They should not be the judge, the jury, and whatever. They do it all. And their answer, they give you, below please find section 5.5 of our rules and regulations and address the matter of delivery of service. 5.5, continuity of service. The company will use reasonable diligence to provide a regular and uninterrupted supply of service. However, electric service is inherently subject to interruption and to change in the normal characteristic thereof from time to time as a result of storm, operating conditions, acts of God, accidents, strikes, for the purpose of making permanent or temporary repairs, changes or improvements to the system, and for other causes. The company will endeavor to restore any service so interrupted and the normal characteristics of the service so changed as soon as practicable after receipt of notice of such interruption or change. Under the circumstances, however, the company cannot be and is not responsible for any loss or damage, direct or indirect. These are the responses that we are getting from them. These are the issues that we need to be addressed. These are the issues that have closed businesses in Grand Bahama. I know this all happened over 2006 and 2008, but just for the record, I'll put this on your desk. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
My name is Arthur Jones. I just wanted to offer a suggestion because what the last person was speaking about, there's a tremendous amount of truth in it. There are too many claims coming out of residents or electricity consumers. They are never satisfied. The power company seems to never take the responsibility for anything. And so my suggestion is this. The power company loves to say, you need to go back and check your grounding system. My suggestion to URCA is that they license some electricians, persons who are trained to work for them, because the consumers need some kind of support, some kind of protection. And if they can license some electricians, I'm not saying just go and license them, pick persons, make sure they're qualified. License those persons who can go out and check these homes or these places to see that the blame isn't coming from their system. Because we need to know who is responsible. Is it coming off the grid or is it coming out of the other side of the meter side of the service? I think if we can get that going, they would feel better. They can get a better response to their claims.
Okay. And your name, sir?
Arthur Jones.
Arthur Jones. All right, Mr. Jones. Can I just respond to Mr. Jones? URCA does have some investigative powers. And once you go through the complaint process with the utility, if you're not satisfied, the same process that Ms. Colley would have outlined in terms of with submitting your complaint, you can go ahead and send that complaint to us, and we will do what we can within...
Yeah, I understand that. I was just suggesting, only because you said you came wanting to know how we feel.
Right.
and you wanted suggestions, I was giving you one. Find a way, because to investigate that particular complaint will take you years and years and years. There are too many existing complaints about the same thing. Everybody has probably lost a router in the last month or so. You know, well, routers, whatever. I mean, they've lost all sorts of devices. I am not saying who's to blame. I am saying we need a way to determine who's to blame. Right. And I think, I hear you say, I hear the limit of your powers, but I say you may want to look to see if you can go beyond that limit and help this situation.
Okay. I'm going to invite Mr. Barrow just to say a few words on that, because he's...
Before, my question is, Mr. Barrow, before you...
We're tag team. We just tag out sometimes, tag in, tag out. You know, I don't want to. We don't want any one of us to take the whole. Right. See, Alan, let me just. I think we have, and URCA has had, since assuming responsibility of this electricity sector in the Bahamas, a series of actions that we have to take, that we have had to take. The first of those Mr. Cambridge mentioned was the licensing of the public electricity suppliers in the Bahamas. And understand our framework works particularly. There's the overriding legislation which contains general powers and says URCA can do this and can do that and so on. And then the next step down from that is that act requires us to license public electricity suppliers. In other words, in order to, the act says any person who provides generation, transmission, distribution, and supply services in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and throughout the Bahamas must have a license from URCA. It is not a secret. It is common knowledge that when URCA sought to license the Grand Bahama Power Company, that licensing activity was challenged, and that matter is still in court. We, however, have taken the view and continue to take the view that our powers to regulate the Grand Bahama Power Company exist, notwithstanding that, and that we have a responsibility to do certain things. Now, we are new to electricity. This is the new kid on the block for us. It may not seem that way, but it is the new kid on the block for us. Our telecommunications responsibility is different. Telecommunications works differently. Dealing with complaints in the telecommunications sector, and you're right, Mr. Jones was it, that it requires less hands-on activity because of the nature of what telecommunications can do. If your call doesn't work, there is a record somewhere that your call didn't work. I don't need to come to your house to find out that your call didn't work, for the most part. But we have identified and do agree with you entirely that there is a need, there will be a need for URCA to begin and to engage in field activities within the electricity sector. We cannot sit at our office in New Providence and monitor and regulate the power companies across the Bahamas. And this is part of our generally, the need to come out of our office is part of why we're here, because we recognize that this sector cannot be regulated the way the electronic communication sector is regulated. These are significant, I almost would want to say monumental tasks. It is a shift in the scope of the activities of URCA that is very significant. We are a 29-member organization. That includes our payroll people, our HR people, and I think of that 29 people, 15 actually are involved in the actual regulation. Most of those are professionals who sit at a desk, if not all. So we have to change how we operate, and I agree with you. I want to say that we have not heard the need for inspections and for people who can come out, suitably qualified people, and that can take time, just getting suitably qualified people, but also setting up the framework under which those suitably qualified people can go into the field and come into your home and inspect, and do so in a way that the power company cannot object or challenge the decisions that these people have made. Our process is designed the way it is because what we do, we don't have a rule that says the power company shouldn't damage your equipment. We have a rule that says they have to deliver power of a particular type. And they have that responsibility to you because you have a contract with them. So as Mr. Cambridge mentioned and Mrs. Johnson-Colley mentioned, the first step has to be you go to them.
Because what we actually, when we take action against them to address your problem, part of that is actually their failure to address your problem themselves. Because that is what should happen. We hold to task our licensees to do what they are supposed to do. Not so much, we don't want to substitute our action for theirs. We aren't going to, while we will inspect, what we're inspecting to say is, well, when they reviewed your complaint, did they do so properly? Did they come up with a fair answer? And have they done what they're supposed to do? That is our role. So actually, much of it can be done on paper. If you record, if you keep good records, we can send out, where we absolutely must, absolutely, we can send somebody, an electrician, and we can do that today. We don't, it's a possibility. We can have someone inspect it. But the activity, the power company has a responsibility to address your complaint and to do it in a way that is clear, the basis on which they've refused. And, for example, I looked at your letters, and there are clear, from that letter, there's actually, in many ways, one could answer a lot of questions just by looking at the response. So I want to say that the first step is complain. Complain every time. When you complain, be diligent about keeping records of your complaint. So, whether it's the responses, whether it's pictures of your equipment, as we live in an age of smartphones, so whether it's pictures of the equipment, pictures of the damage that's been done, receipts, whatever information and data you can keep. And then, if they don't solve your problem, if they don't do it to your satisfaction, come to us. Now, I'm not saying, and I think you made the point, not every complaint is going to be resolved with URCA saying you're right and you deserve money. But it is important, and I think we must get to the point as a country where we understand that the approach is to stand up for your own rights so that we can help stand up as well.
Yeah, I think you're saying, though, that what I'm suggesting may be out of... It's not.
We will do it at some point.
We
fully intend.
Even if you cannot do it,
your advice,
you have a right to advise government.
Your advice, your advice, the Electricity Act, and I can't remember the section, does provide for URCA to have inspectors and so on, for various, and it is something, it is more a challenge of time and resources. Over the period, we are funded by license fees, and that's a process in itself, and obviously one has to pay people, so there are a number of things that we have to put in place, but I'm saying that I agree with you and that is something that we very much feel that we should do. It's just getting there is sometimes a road. But bear with us, Freeport.
Thank you.
Can I tag out now?
Either one of you. Electricity. C. Alan Johnson. Well, I can let you know that on Grand Bahama, I know of instances like during the hurricane where individuals had no electricity but had bills for 3 months, where there was no wires running to the house, no pole. And they actually have light bill, and they had to pay the light bill, a number of individuals.
Well, we've had complaints of that sort that have been resolved in New Providence.
Right.
I mean, I'm aware of that.
Resolved
that does happen.
They simply told the individuals that paid the light bill. I mean, literally, they said they read meters that was not there. On Grand Bahama, it's come to the point now where if you go outside and look at the moonlight, you'll get a bill. Don't use your flashlight. Don't order Bud Light. Don't use sunlight. You will get a bill on Grand Bahama. And so, and I'm very concerned concerning the CP, the Consumer Protection Plan, because you're having those individuals. I'm very interested in I'm concerned, and this is a personal concern, with the fact that if the law doesn't, but you're suing, and I'm going to become an advocate for this because we have 39 individuals that can change the law on the instant. I mean, we did it for dogs, we did it for turtles, we did it for sharks. Surely they should do it for behemoths. Because in the whole essence, and I understand the argument under the Hawkesbury Peak Agreement, because that format for which they are claiming exclusivity for me no longer exists, because accordingly they have separated themselves from the actual aspect of how the Hawkesbury Peak Agreement should exist, but that's a technical argument for a later date. And so I'm trying not to be technical here, but my concern is about the consumer protection. To have them write the plan without us putting any input, it's not going to change from what they have it right there.
If I can just be clear, and I know Mr. Cambridge mentioned it, and there's two things I want to be clear about. Firstly, there is an obligation for the public electricity supplier to to prepare a consumer protection plan, which is then submitted to URCA for approval. It is published by URCA for consultation. And based on that consultation, so the plan and the responses to the consultation received, URCA then requires changes to the plan to take account of those comments that would have been received, and then will approve the plan in a final form that has been subject to public input. So I just want to be clear that any consumer protection, and we've just completed one for BPL. Now, I also want to be clear, and I'm not allowed, my lawyer is somewhere in the room, I am not allowed to speak to Hawksbill Creek and those legal matters. I can speak, and I've been told, to the Electricity Act, saying that URCA regulates electricity throughout the Bahamas, including the port area, as far as the Electricity Act is concerned. URCA is a creature of statute. That act is what governs us, so we will act accordingly. So therefore, I will say I don't necessarily expect that we will see a Grand Bahama Power Company consumer protection plan anytime soon, because they're not about to go produce one. However, what we are doing quite separately is we're producing consumer protection regulations, which will cover the electricity sector, will be produced by URCA as a regulatory measure, and which we believe, upon our reading of the Electricity Act, are a measure that can be enforced throughout the Bahamas, as I mentioned, under the Electricity Act. We will, however, as a regulator, also, we are fully aware, and I want to be realistic with anyone listening to us, we've decided that we need to pursue the matters in court to their natural conclusion, and the chips will fall where they may. The law exists, and I believe the law to be clear. We expect challenges from those who do not agree with the provisions in that law, and we will respond to those challenges assiduously, and we will seek to do what the law obligates us as a regulator to do. We will not, this is not a short, easy, or certain road on which we go. However, we do believe that we are strong, and we are strong in our conviction that we have to do it. So we are willing, able, ready to hear your complaints. We will take up those complaints as we consider appropriate under the Electricity Act, and we will pursue those complaints. However, I do not expect the response to be one of absolutely, all right? So I do want to set, we just want to be clear about expectations and ensure that people understand that we will do what we're supposed to do. This will take some time. There will be challenges along the way. We're being realistic, but that we believe that there are solutions that are available, and that in time, people in Grand Bahama, throughout Grand Bahama, if it is at all possible for us, will have the benefit of our regulatory intervention.
Just out of curiosity, do you do the water also?
No, we don't.
Okay. just trying to find out. But before you leave, I invite you to stand on the street corner. There's a building right next to on the next to the street. Then there's a main highway, and then there's another pink building. I want you to stand on the street corner so you could see what it feels like when we're standing between two thieves, except none is asking to make it into heaven.
I won't and can't comment on that, what you just said.
But here's the problem in Grand Bahama. We have the industrial sector, and I mean, if you want to save energy in your light bill, where we have the reactive power coming in, we could very easily estimate about 25% of the energy delivered to us is unusable. Because if you look with the industrial sector, you could almost use your clock as a fan to duplicate telling time and everything else. But I see we're running out of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and see you guys for the pop-up section, because I have a couple questions concerning the sector, and a couple of my questions may be technical. I'm trying to flip through them. So what I'm going to do is pass on this, and I see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, C. Allen. We have time for one more question. Sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Philip Umbrissa. I've been complaining from 1985 about my high light bill. I live in a 4-bedroom house, and my light bill goes up to $1,500 a month. I have recently taken out my electric stove and my washer, dryer, and put them in gas. But it has gone down tremendously. It has reached something like $500. And every time I go, they tell me, well, there's some ground and all that. And I'm bringing the electrician around to check it out. On the 25th of September 2016, I was watching football and the power went out. It came back in a couple of minutes later, and then my TV went out. I put in a claim from 2016. I continued to go back to them. I then wrote to them on several occasions. And I also called your office, made a complaint to your office in 2017. They asked me to send in the papers. I did that. And up to now, I haven't heard from anybody. They didn't even answer none of my letters that I wrote.
You said Philip
Ambrister.
Ambrister?
Philip Ambrister.
Well, no. You said 2016.
Yes, sir, that's when it happened. But I called your office in 2017, a year later.
Okay. Well, I'll have to just, when I go back, I'll research, or if you wish, you can resubmit the stuff, because I didn't join URCA until 2017. So
okay.
It probably went to Mr. Barrow.
Okay. I'll send it back in again. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No. But Mr. Barrow wants to come and defend himself. Hold on.
I'm not going to try to defend anything. What I will say is, and this trip, this evening, signifies or signals a change in the approach that URCA is taking to a problem we have had for the last 2 years. We sought in 2016 to do as we were bidden to do by the law. And we obviously were subjected to certain challenges in court. But over the last few months, we have reconsidered or reviewed our approach and our response to that issue, which was leaving us in a position of not being a regulator where the law tells us we must regulate. So it may be, and I do apologize, I sincerely apologize if you've sent a complaint in to us, but honestly, we had no decision on what we would do with complaints about a licensee who refuses to be regulated by us. We've since made some decisions, and so we're here to say we intend to do our best to address the issues that come from Freeport in a way that I will admit we have not been doing for the last 2 years because of the court matters that have hobbled us on this island.
Can you give me one other incident? In 2015, my mother-in-law died in Nassau, so my wife and my daughter went to Nassau, and they stayed about a month. And my light bill went down. They came the next month and changed my meter, said that something is wrong with my meter.
Thank you so much, and we're concluding. Pastor Victor, you have a quick statement you'd like to just make before we close out?
This is primarily just for the record. This is the very first time that any regulator has met with the public in the city of Freeport. So that needs to go on the record.
Thank you so much, Pastor Victor. And I think that concludes our question and answer segment. Mrs. Johnson-Colley, would you like to close us out? Do you have any final words you would like to?
Just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming out. We want to thank, of course, our team here from Freeport. We want to thank all of you for being such an attentive audience. We do hope and pray that the information that you received was of some value to you. We want to thank our moderator. Let's give our moderator a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
area, in the East End area of Grand Bahama, please encourage them to come out tomorrow evening where they will receive a similar presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Drive safe. And be sure to follow URCA on their social media platforms. You can go to Facebook and as well as their website to stay connected to URCA and all of their developments. Thank you, everyone. Drive safely.